Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Shamini Ramane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvise Sasunyavadi Paschatya Satanine. You'll have to excuse the background noise. You may hear cars, ducks, people walking, and people talking. As I am not at home. I'm at my sister's house and on the balcony, and there's a lake over there. And people walk around the lake. I don't know if you can see it, but people walk around the lake. And the ducks make noise, and now the sprinklers are on. Wow, it's exciting. It's going to be an exciting time here. So, we're in nature, and we're doing it naturally. Yeah, we have the sprinklers as background music. We have the ducks as background music. We have the mountains as background. And the air is very fresh here. That's nice. And it's very cold. I have many layers of clothes on. And I thought, this is like Vrindavan, where it's cold out and the temple's outside and you have to dress very warmly. So this is the best place to do the class because my sister's in the house, and I don't want to take over the house. And we couldn't figure out where to do it, where I wouldn't disturb her. So we decided we would do it out here, and we may be disturbed a little bit by background noise, cars, trucks, ducks, people walking and talking, and sprinklers, but I think we'll be okay. And I wanted to begin with a beautiful mantra. It's the Shanti Mantra. I don't know if you know this mantra, and I'll chant it, and then I'll explain what it means, because it's really nice. And generally, this is chanted before you give a class, at least traditionally. And maybe some of you have heard this mantra. It goes like this. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Virya Kararavahaye Tejasvina Vidat Tamastuma Vidvishavahaye Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So you've heard the last line. And now you're going to hear what it means. Om, of course Om refers to Krishna. Saha means together. Navavatu. Navavatu means both of us may he protect. Avatu means protect. So Saha together, Na, both of us. And then the next line, Saha no, again, Bhunaktu, may we be nourished or energized. Saha means together. Saha Viryam, Virya means power. Karavahai, in our work, where may we have power. And Tejasvi, energy in our work. Our work here is class. And the last line, maybe we have power, energy, and may our intellect work to a higher degree. Adhi, intellect, or study, tama, means uttama, higher degree. Astu, so be it. And may there not be vidva, animosity, avahai, between us. So I'll read the translation. May he protect us together. May he nourish us both together. May we work conjointly with great energy. May our study be vigorous and effective. May we not mutually dispute. Let there be peace in me and my environment and in the forces that act upon me. And if you want to find this mantra, just Google Saha, S-A-H-A, and Na Vavatu, N-A-V-A-V-A-T-U, Na Vavatu. Saha Na Vavatu, and then you can find this mantra. And you'll like this mantra, it's nice. I'll chant it again. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinava Ditamastuma Vidvishavahaye Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So today I decided, let's stir up an interesting conversation that's topical. I don't know if you've heard, but the GBC is having a meeting now, or it's just over. And they have 2 meetings a year, and they have one meeting in Mayapur in which they discuss many, many issues, and they have a midterm meeting. And this time it was in Tirupati, and they discuss specific issues. So they set aside time, amongst other things, to discuss female Diksha Guru. And this has been one of the more divisive discussions, both on the GBC and in our movement. And because we're talking about women here, and then I thought, well, this would be a good opportunity for us to talk about women in relation to the Diksha Guru, female Diksha Guru, or Vaishnavi Diksha Guru. And I didn't advertise we were going to talk about this. If I did, we'd probably have 100,000 people watching. And I wouldn't be able to appease everyone because some are for it and some are against. So I will do my best to explain my understanding of the discussions that GBC had and the discussions I've had with other devotees. So you may be wondering why it's a divisive issue. Didn't Prabhupada say that all his sons and daughters should become guru? And he did say that in 1968. And he also said children, my sons, daughters, and children. So becoming guru doesn't necessarily mean Diksha Guru. So that could be understood to mean that we should all be guru, and that means we should all teach Krishna consciousness. So whether you're a man, woman, or a child, that's what you should do. And so some said that, well, when Prabhupada said all men and women, all my sons and daughters should be guru, it didn't mean Diksha Guru. It meant we should all be teachers. All glories to Las Vegas. I was just in Las Vegas. Beautiful temple. So, and that's obviously true, everyone should become a Siksha Guru. So some devotees took it that way, that when Prabhupada said we should all be Siksha Gurus, he included children. And of course you could say in the future they should become gurus, and any qualified person should become guru. So that's the other understanding, that he wanted all of us to become qualified, yes, to be Siksha Guru, and some of us to be Diksha Guru amongst the sons, daughters, and children, which means in the future children should be qualified. So that's the other side of the argument. And interestingly, Prabhupada said that, I believe, in 1968, very early on in the movement, feeling that he would not live long, or didn't know how long he would live. And therefore he wanted to prepare us. So Prabhupada was asked by a professor, I believe it was Professor O'Connell, who asked, can women be gurus? And Prabhupada said, why not? And he cited Janava Mataji, the wife of Lord Nityananda. He said it's less common. They asked Prabhupada's godbrother this question. He said some, not many. Prabhupada said similar. Radha Govinda Maharaj was asked, I was told, he said, he mentioned a name of one who he felt was qualified within ISKCON. So then the discussion went, well, if it's some, not many, and there was never really that discussion with men, there seems to be a difference. Why some women? And then some could say, well, generally women don't take leadership roles, and that's why. But there are other reasons given, that women need protection, and this is more of a male, Om Sahanavavdu. There's the verse. Yes. Thank you, Prayag. How are you doing? So it was seen to be more of a male occupation traditionally. There were very few women gurus. There were. And so that shed some doubt on Prabhupada's statement. Did he really want his daughters to be gurus? Because the only gurus amongst the women were extremely elevated souls, of course. Only gurus amongst the men were extremely elevated. So maybe that's not such a strong argument, but some have given that if the woman is liberated, she can do it. But this idea that very few men, it's not common, and we also see it's not generally the nature of a woman to want to take that role. But Prabhupada didn't discount the possibility, and he did allow women in some situations to be in charge. So, why the controversy? If Prabhupada said you wanted everyone to be guru, then why the controversy? We have women who are very advanced, they give amazing classes. Why should there be any controversy? Well, there wasn't really a controversy until, I believe, 2002, when one or two women wanted to become gurus. So in ISKCON, if you want to become a guru, it requires that you propose that to a GBC or to your local authorities. You get approval from the local temple. They ask 10 devotees, or they get a committee together of 10 devotees. Say, do you see any reason why this person shouldn't be guru? And then it goes to the GBC. Yes, still in Arizona. And it goes to the GBC, and for a period of 3 or 6 months, a GBC member, if he has some concern about this person being guru for whatever reason, he could express that. And if no one expresses, or I think it's 3 or less express concern, then the person is allowed to take disciples. If more than 3 express concern, then I don't know what happens. They prevent it, or they talk to him, or they make some condition. So that's how it stands now. Whether it will be that way in the future, I can't say for sure. It's gone through some minor modifications, nothing major. It's being discussed. Some people like the system, some don't. But that's the current system. So let's say you want to be a guru, whether you're a man or woman, you would tell that to the GBC, or a prospective disciple would go to the GBC and say, I would like to accept so-and-so as my guru, but they're not approved or recognized by that. Approved is not the word they want to use. They're not recognized by ISKCON. So the GBC would then ask 10 people locally who know the person. Then he would tell the GBC body that this person wants to be guru, and they would discuss that. So it came up. This is, as far as I understand, it came up in 2002 that 1 or 2 women would like to be guru. And that's when the issue came up, as no one was thinking about it, as far as I understand. Because the issue came up in 2002, and that's I'm not a GBC member, so I'm giving you my view of what I understand is happening, that it really didn't come up. No woman had asked to become guru. So the issue of a female guru didn't come up. It didn't have to come up. And I assume that some people just assumed there wouldn't be. So anyway, it came up, and then it was discussed. And because it's not so common in our tradition, then when a woman wanted to become guru, it didn't go through the normal procedure. And people were saying, wait a minute, do we want women gurus in our movement? Are they supposed to be gurus? And if so, can women on, let's say, the level of nishta, like the same level as the men, or ruchi, can they be gurus, or do they have to actually be liberated? Because women are different than men, and maybe this is not really a male job. It would be difficult for them. They need protection. They're more emotional, etc., etc. I don't know all the arguments, but it was the argument of women need protection, traditional role. And then the argument went to social. Traditional role, social role. Woman's role is in the home, as mother, as grandmother. Do we want to establish a different social culture than a traditional culture, where women are out in the forefront leading men as gurus, really arguably the highest position in ISKCON, at least spiritually, or at least officially spiritually. Not necessarily does a guru mean you're the most advanced, but officially it may be seen that way. So then these discussions, well, do you want a woman in a position that will be in many ways higher than most men's position, in a sense higher than a sannyasi, higher than any manager in a sense, or on an equal footing? So all these discussions came. Is this the culture we want? Or shouldn't women be more focused on mothers and and wives and grandmothers and so forth, and be in a less prominent role. So these were the discussions. Are they qualified? And even if they are qualified, which some didn't think they were, socially, are they qualified? Is it right socially that we have women in such high leadership positions? So the GBC has what's called a Shastric Advisory Committee of very learned devotees, and they, if they are not clear on something, or if there's a divisive issue and they need more clarity, they will give the issue to the Shastric Advisory Committee. So they gave the issue to the Shastric Advisory Committee. Study the tradition of gurus, specifically women gurus. What's our history? What's the tradition? What's the Shastra? What did Prabhupada say? And so they did that. They studied it. And when they study it, I think there's at least 6 of them. They're all very learned, and they do a thorough study. So it's not just what's your opinion, but they do a thorough study. So they came back to the GBC and they said there's nothing in Shastra that would prevent a female devotee within ISKCON taking disciples. Nothing that they could come up with. So then it goes back to the GBC, and then the GBC passed a resolution to that effect, or similar to that women can initiate. But there were devotees, specifically devotees in India, who felt that this would not go over well in India, and again, it's not part of our culture. So then, what I understood was that the GBC in principle accepted the idea that women can be gurus, but in practice, there was a lot of opposition. For those reasons I mentioned, socially, women should be more advanced. There shouldn't be many doing it. They're not really, it's a difficult position for a woman, etc. And then specifically, it would ruin, I don't know if the word is ruin. It could divide our movement, and we could lose a reputation in many ways. Because there are other Gaudiya Sampradayas, like the Sri Sampradaya, or other Sampradayas that don't have women gurus, will never have women gurus, who will tell you that this is not Shastric or bona fide, lest perhaps the woman guru is a liberated soul, like the wife of Lord Nityananda, or something like that. So the devotees are saying that we'll lose all respectability with these other Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradayas. Well, these are not Gaudiya Vaishnava. Gaudiya Vaishnava, I don't think it's a problem. I don't get the impression that it's a problem. That women did have leading roles, and Prabhupada's godbrother Sridhar Maharaj said it could be a few women, so it wasn't a problem for him, which I suppose that means it wasn't a problem for Bhaktisiddhanta, even though it wasn't common. Or maybe there were no women gurus, maybe only women Siksha gurus teaching other women. In any case, from my understanding, what has held this up, we're talking 17 years now before this came out, and maybe we're talking 15 years before the GBC said, yes, women can become gurus. So what's holding it up was devotees in India who felt that this is wrong. It doesn't represent ISKCON's culture. Indians won't accept it. Other Indian Vaishnava Sampradayas will make a mockery of our Sampradaya if we do this. And it will divide us. Some devotees will oppose it. They won't want to be part of ISKCON, or they'll pull out of ISKCON. All this discussion was going on. And so the GBC was concerned, okay, we have to consider this issue. And at one point, there was some discussion that this could be an extremely divisive decision, which could cause problems, that could cause some split. So obviously we don't want to split, but we were told last year that that's not the case, that the devotees in India would prefer that women don't take the role of initiating gurus, but they're not going to split or turn against ISKCON. Although we can't say individuals wouldn't do that, but the leadership. promised that that would not happen. They would go along with the decision. So this year they discussed it. And so they looked at all these sides, the Shastric side where they couldn't really find a valid reason to say women can't be guru, and they couldn't really find a valid reason why certain qualified women in our movement couldn't be guru, although some say that unless they're liberated from their material conditioning, they can't be, because women's material conditioning would make it difficult or impossible to be guru. But we don't, it's hard to back that up with Shastra. I mean, you can interpret Shastra that way, but at least the GBC didn't see it that way. So then the GBC thought, well, we acknowledge we don't have enough evidence. Oh yeah, so last year, let's go back a little. Last year, some devotees came out with some references that women shouldn't be gurus, or specifically only liberated women should be gurus. And so that was taken into consideration. But when Prabhupada said, I want all my sons and daughters to be gurus, then, the question came, well, why not men liberated? And what are the qualifications for guru? And we're not liberated, but Prabhupada asked us to be guru, and the qualification was we follow him. We follow his instructions. We live what he taught us to live. So, anyone else not have sound? Sound should be there. There's no reason why we wouldn't have it. Unless I'm saying something that the world is not meant to hear. Anyone else? Because we have to tell Jackie whether I need to know, and yeah. There is sound. Click the button in the lower right to unmute. Yeah, okay. So, two devotees published a book, and the book had many, many Shastric references that women... Okay, good. There is sound. That women should not be gurus unless they're liberated. They can't do that. And so they were part of the Indian contingency who felt that this was not our culture. And so they published a book and they passed it out. And I'm part of a group called Sabha, and Sabha is a group which is meant to give feedback to the GBC and also look at GBC resolutions and give feedback to those resolutions. So we had this discussion, and the book that these devotees published was given to us, and we read it. And it was a lot of Shastric reference, primarily Shastric reference, and very little, if any, reference from Srila Prabhupada, which I found concerning, because we have to understand everything, not just according to Shastra, but according to Srila Prabhupada, and they said Shastra trumps Prabhupada's instructions, that Shastra is above it, and Prabhupada would only support the Shastra, which, of course, Prabhupada would only do. But in this case, there wasn't enough that Prabhupada said about this topic that seemed to support their argument. And they were saying the ultimate pramana is Shastra, not Srila Prabhupada, where we say all pramanas are equal, but ultimately we have to understand everything through Prabhupada. Because, sometimes you'll read something, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said something, but it was time, place, circumstance. And Prabhupada didn't do it, or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta didn't do it, and so we can't. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur maybe have quoted some Shastra somewhere, but we can't follow that because it's not what Prabhupada did. So we had discussed that with the Sabha, and the majority of Sabha members were for the female Diksha guru. Some were not. Some were Indian, part of that Indian contingency, and they explained to us why there was concern in India. And it was not that they didn't like women, or it's not that they wanted to minimize women, but they were concerned about the social context and the qualification and the divisions that it could cause, and, as we said, the credibility amongst other Vaishnava sampradayas. And, of course, the question on our part was, but there are women, very popular women gurus in India. So we had a difficult time understanding why they were so concerned, but maybe it meant that Vaishnava Sampradayas in India don't agree, although there are very popular women. Sabha, S-A-B-H-A. It's an advisory assembly. Shastric, I don't know, what's the Sangha, I forget, I'm part of it, I don't even know. But assembly, it's an assembly of Vaishnavas that give feedback to the GBC. Basically, temple presidents used to do that. They'd read the resolution, Sabha, yeah. I forgot what it means. That's embarrassing. So they give us the resolutions, we look at them, and we can propose resolutions, or we can just ask them to discuss things. And sometimes they ask us for feedback, what do you think about this? So we had discussed it. And there were, I think there's 28 of us, and maybe 5 were against, or 1 was abstaining, who was the sannyasi. 1 sannyasi was against. Another sannyasi was against. A devotee in India was against. So some sannyasis have concerns about this, and devotees from India. That seems to be the demographic that's opposing it in general, or those who want to establish a more traditional approach to culture. In the name of Varnashram, that's our culture, so this is not Varnashram, we should have women. And then, of course, the other side is, well, Varnashram is part of it, but preaching is the other side. And in preaching, we make adjustments to what's best. So the Sabha has given approval, and then the GBC, after passing this resolution, has asked us, again, do we approve of this resolution? And as far as I can tell, I think we just need a 2/3 majority, so there's 28 of us. 2/3 is what, like 18 or 19 or 20? What's 2/3? Yeah. Less than 20, right? So from what I can tell, it will pass. I don't think there's that many opposed to it. So it'll pass on our side, and that'll go back to the GBC. And there, as far as I can tell, unless there's something unexpected, it'll probably be ratified either soon or at the Mayapur meeting in March. And then any woman who wants to be guru would go through the same process. 18, yeah, so 18 will pass. So then any woman who wants to be guru will just do the same process as the men. What the GBC had decided was that, as Prabhupada said, there are, not many. There was some fear by some men that there would be, the guruship might have too many women, like women in high positions is not healthy. There's a concern, there were these Shastric quotes that only should be a liberated woman. So there was a concern that it would be more special women. Of course, men who become guru are special, they're advanced, but maybe even more special amongst the women. So probably there's going to be a little more scrutiny over which women can do it, and maybe if that woman were in a man's body, they wouldn't be so much scrutiny. Anyway, it's better than nothing. So they decided that there would be some limitation. That was what a decision said. They would oversee that, if there's too many women becoming gurus, and I'm sure they'll just oversee it in general if this becomes a problem. And I've often said, the best way to resolve this controversy, or the best way to make a decision is to make a decision. Okay, that's Mahatma Dasa's profound statement. The best way to make a decision is make a decision. In other words, when you don't know what to do, whether it's right or wrong, then do it and you'll find out. So I was always of the opinion that there were very few women who wanted to be guru too, to my knowledge. And both of them are very Krishna conscious. I know both of them. They're very Krishna conscious. So my opinion was, at least let one of them do it and monitor it and see if the fears and concerns that the opposition party had are warranted. Or if everything's going well, the disciples are well, she's well. If it provides a different culture in ISKCON that's healthy, that some women don't want male gurus, they can open up more to a woman like that. So that was my opinion. So I'm sure that's what's going to happen. It's going to be monitored. That woman will give feedback, and she might go through what it means to be a guru. Sometimes your disciples turn against you. Sometimes they criticize you. Sometimes they expect things from you you can't deliver. This is what it means to be a guru. Or you become very attached, and then they leave. And they don't even tell you they're leaving. They won't even respond to your letters. It's like you just lost a child. So maybe that's more difficult for a woman than a man. We have to see. Maybe there's a way that women have to do it so they don't get emotionally involved. But even for me, as a man, when you lose a disciple, especially if you were close with that disciple, that's hard. Or if a disciple turns against you and you helped that person, you showed so much affection and you sacrificed, and then they turn against you because they expected things you couldn't give them. That's not easy. So there was some concern that maybe that's going to be difficult for a woman. So if we have a couple of women doing it, and inevitably they're going to go through these things, they will eventually lose disciples. Eventually some disciples will just become neutral or turn against them or criticize them, as happens. And then maybe it won't be a problem. Maybe they'll deal with it better than men. Maybe they'll be able to help their disciples. Who knows? So that's going to be there. And then the other decision, because there was so much resistance in India from the Indian leadership saying this is going to destroy ISKCON. They were saying things like, this is destroy ISKCON, it's the end of ISKCON, it's going to divide ISKCON. Of course, in the West, we all feel like, no, this is going to nourish ISKCON. When people find out women can be gurus, women have a place in ISKCON, a comfortable place, then that will be good. Because one of the obstacles to preaching, maybe it's not a main obstacle or a huge obstacle, but still it's an obstacle, and certainly women being second-class citizens is an obstacle for new women who come. And women who see that and feel slighted by that sometimes don't want to join our movement. Maybe it's not overly common, but we've never done any research, but we can understand that obviously there's some women that come and see the way things are in our movement and say, I like your philosophy, but not your culture. So we feel if things are a little more equal in the West and people see that women are gurus and women can have gurus, that would help the preaching. In India, they feel the opposite, at least some people. Now, not everyone agrees. Not everybody agrees that in India it would be a bad thing. Some people think it would be a good thing. And we will only see that. Now the Indian devotees say, well look, if you're going to have women gurus anywhere, even if we don't allow them in India, it's still Indians are going to find out and it's going to be detrimental. So what's the GBC going to do? This was a compromise. And so basically any temple president, what the rule is that any temple president, and I don't know how this is going to work, any temple president can decide that they don't want female gurus in their temple. I don't know what that means. That means they don't, let's say, like Lakshmi said she wants a female guru, and your temple president says we don't allow female gurus. I don't know what that means. Does it mean that the initiation can't go on in the temple? Does it mean you can't live in that temple? It wasn't clear. I don't know what it means. Does it mean it has to be clandestine? You don't tell anybody? I don't know how that's going to work, and I don't even know if it can work, but I think it was a compromise, at least to give Indian temples some security that there won't be any female gurus or initiations in their temples. So this, of course, is a broader issue. It's not just female Diksha gurus, it's the whole situation of females within ISKCON. And obviously, you're going to have two sides now. You'll have two sides in the future. Those who who want to give women more opportunities than they've had in the past, and those who feel it's better to restrict women. Now, we had spoken last week about this question. Is it actually because we believe restricting women is the best thing for spreading Krishna consciousness, or is it because we have men who feel uneasy around women who are very capable and powerful? Is it because socially it's difficult for men to accept women in roles of leadership? And I'm sure you're going to get opinions on both sides. And of course, the argument for women is that the world is going in this direction, and we're not resonating is not the word. We're not aligned with the way the world is going. So you have women leaders in companies and CEOs, and we don't. And so young women come and they look at that and they say, I like your philosophy and I like your prasadam, I like your kirtan, but I don't see myself as being part of a movement that relegates women to an inferior position or doesn't give women equal opportunity as men. So I don't think we can argue that in the West. That's definitely a fact. How much of a factor is that in deterring women from joining ISKCON? I don't know, but you could make the argument if it deters one, that's one too many. Now you have to make the argument, well, you can sacrifice one to save a village. Is this actually saving a village by relegating women to a more secondary position? Is it saving the village of ISKCON? I think many would argue, no, it's not. It's not really helping anything. It's just minimizing service that women could render, and it seems that Prabhupada was an advocate of giving women equal opportunity based on the fact that women wanted to do all these services, that they could do all these services, and that there were no cultural restrictions in the West. So Prabhupada wasn't really worried about women doing all these things in the West because it was acceptable. And interestingly, in India, he put women in prominent positions as leading kirtan and giving class, just to kind of like slap the Indians in the face and go, look at, not only are these Americans, but here's a woman. Yeah, so I'm going to read your comments because they look good. And as I said last week, it's better to read the comments when they come up, but I have a train of thought in there, and I lose my train of thought when I read the comments. I think the first... So Krishna Karshani is asking or saying, after GBC approved women to be Diksha Gurus, so many discussions are going on Facebook. Many men devotees are against this idea, saying that it's not aligned with our tradition. Yes. An example, Janava Mata is given. Men are saying that if women will be on the level of Lord Nityananda's wife, they can be gurus, but it seems the male gurus in ISKCON are not on the level of Nityananda. So for me, it seems that devotees don't understand general idea of being guru. Guru doesn't have to be Uttama gurus. Yeah, no, but they felt that, I mean, we already explained this for the other reasons. The natural frailties of women may... The argument was the natural frailties of women would make the job of guru, Diksha Guru, problematic for them. And I heard someone explain it, and I listened carefully, and I thought, maybe he's right. I didn't really buy into it so much, but I like to give everything the benefit of the doubt, so I considered it. Maybe he's right, but then the people we're considering for guru are very much in a similar position. They're teachers, they're leaders, they're Siksha Gurus. So being Diksha Guru is different than being a Siksha Guru. There's more of an emotional connection and a bond with disciples. It's official. It's a big thing. And again, my decision was, you won't know the answer until you do it. And if it's only one woman or two women, and it doesn't work out perfectly, those women gurus can just say, I need help, and ask their disciples to get the shelter of a Siksha guru, a male Siksha guru, to make it easier for them. That could be done. That would be like the worst case scenario. And these women are preachers, and they travel and they preach, and they'd still be traveling and preaching, but maybe some of the other functions of the Diksha Guru they would get help with. That would be like the worst thing that could happen. And the interesting thing, I don't know if the GBC had this discussion, but this is very interesting for me, because I've been observing this issue, and just observing as a member of ISKCON the difficulties that some of the gurus have had over the years, and the difficulties sannyasis have had. And one of the big concerns in letting someone become initiating guru is that we want to make sure, amongst other things, that they're stable in their Krishna consciousness, that they're not going to fall away, because it's, as we know, it's a disaster when a guru falls down. Disciples lose faith, and it creates so many problems. And of course, when we talk about men falling down, what are we talking about? Well, very rarely are we talking about gambling or eating meat or even taking drugs. That's extremely rare. That did happen to a couple of gurus, but it's extremely rare, and it only happened to two. But falling, getting married, falling down, however you want to. That's such an interesting word, falling down. It means sannyasis giving up their sannyas, either because they got a woman pregnant or they want to get married, or both. Whoops. So, GBC decided that no woman under 55 should get married. That keeps it kosher, so, if she has male disciples her age, but generally at that point there's not much attraction, and women are not that attractive at that age. And if she has male disciples 20, 30, 40 years younger than her, that's kosher. But we rarely find a senior woman devotee in a prominent position of ISKCON running off with a man. But we find it quite common, maybe not quite common, but we find it common that a man in a senior position runs off, leaves his wife, runs off with another woman, gives up his sannyas, and so forth. So I found it interesting, maybe perhaps strange, that there was so much resistance to women being gurus, because the liability is much more with men falling down into illicit sex than women. So, if the concern was about falling down, then I would say, okay, have more female gurus, because the likelihood of them falling down to illicit sex is lower than a man. It's just the way the physiology is wired. Some people said, but she's a woman, and then male disciples. Yeah, okay, so what about women and male gurus? I mean, that was not a strong argument. Okay, so let's see your other comments. Sabha, the Sabha. Spiritual assembly, something. We just came up with an acronym, which just means we're helping the GBC, but we wanted to use the word Sabha. So Lakshmi says he had always felt more comfortable with women in authority. So that's an interesting point. And it's going to be interesting to see when the first woman guru, like what happens, because I started taking disciples in 2015, and I travel, but I don't have a zone. So when you have a GBC zone, you tend to get more disciples. So I've initiated, so it's been like 5 years. I've initiated, I think, 39 or 40 devotees, and we have like another 50, 60, or 70 waiting, and maybe another 40 or 50 or something like that who see me as their Siksha guru. So it would be interesting to see when a woman becomes guru. Because the women who'll do it are in a similar position as me. They're not like big sannyasis with big zones who would, who automatically would attract. They're very much in my position. It would be interesting to see. Maybe in a few years they'll have 500 disciples. Who knows? That would be amazing. And that would really say something powerful. But you could even say, even if it's just that, if it's only that Lakshmi becomes her only disciple, but Lakshmi couldn't take initiation from anyone else, then why not? Why restrict? But I'm sure there are many women like Lakshmi, which is very interesting. And I don't think that was discussed on the GBC. Rafal has his opinion. This is my speculation. Womanist program with family support corps, children, husband, garden, garden, support by the garden. Those and familiar areas. Since woman is off with these above, she can't transfer those amazing tools, abilities, and elevate to a totally different and amazing level. So from my point of view, it's very interesting to see where this will go. Well, the point is that this is interesting. I can definitely comment on that. I've discussed this with my wife because this has come up. They need support and they should be protected by their husband or son. So what if they're not protected by their husband and son? Then some said, well, they should just have an authority, like just work with an authority. Yeah, I hope the authority is rich, because I don't know what that means. But it just means someone to consult if you're having trouble. But does that mean a male is always the best person to consult when you're having trouble? But I was telling my wife, if you're talking about being protected, and some are saying, well, if you become a guru, it's not a woman's position. You're much more protected than if you're a Siksha guru, because you have disciples. Disciples have homes. Disciples have jobs. They can give you donations. If you're ill, your disciples will pitch in. They'll make sure to take care of you. They'll take leave from their job to take care of you. You're much more well protected as a Diksha guru than as a Siksha guru, as a female or as a male. Maybe not as a male sannyasi. As a male sannyasi, you're pretty much guaranteed to be taken care of. As a female preacher, pretty much you'll be taken care of, but if you really want to talk about protection on the physical level, having disciples is an excellent way to do that, much better than not having disciples. And if you need the protection of a man, guidance, so you have a lot of sons, disciples, because it's father, husband, or son. So I didn't really understand that argument, how they wouldn't be protected. And right now we have some women that travel and preach, and they're fine, and so who's protecting them? I don't know. I think Krishna. I think Prabhupada. So that's what I always found difficult, is saying women this, women that. But there are women who are traveling, preaching, helping, guiding, giving class, writing books, attending meetings, giving their opinion, and they're alive and well. So I don't understand those arguments. They seem very theoretical, because this is actually happening. So it's an interesting issue, certainly, to see the arguments and how these arguments, my nature is the way I look at Krishna consciousness. I look at what Shastra says, I look at what Prabhupada says, I look at what other God brothers and learned devotees say, what the Acharyas say, and I also look at reality, and I think some devotees, this sounds like a criticism, but sometimes it seems like some devotees do all of the above except the last one. They don't look at reality. They make statements based on Shastra that in the real world don't make sense. And so Prabhupada was never like that. Things have to make sense in the real world as well. You can't make a statement that this is what Shastra is and interpret it and come up with a conclusion that has no basis in the way things are. It's not how we're going to spread Krishna consciousness. It's not how we're going to attract people. And people will think we're completely crazy. Now, of course, sometimes we talk about things which are transcendental, which you can't prove. That's another thing. But things which are right in front of us that work a certain way, and we say they don't work that way, when they actually are working that way in front of everyone's eyes, that we can't do. And I think sometimes these arguments against women are like that. I hear them, I try to understand them. I go, okay, I understand where you're coming from culturally and shastrically, but it's not like that. You know, and you look at the world today and you find some women are more male than some men. Some men are more female than some women. So, you know, it's Kali Yuga. Things are very mixed up. So the decision for a female to become guru is up to her or up to the people who want her to be guru, prospective disciples. And it's a service. And so that's a decision she has to make. It ultimately shouldn't be a decision anyone else makes for her. Neither should that be a decision a male is made for him. Inspiration comes from within, and the situation is there that you can help people. So let's read on. We have, isn't discrimination against female gurus just a bodily attachment? And that's an illusion? And you could make that argument, although you get in trouble if you make that argument, because then you'll be criticizing very advanced devotees who don't want it, whose reasoning is more that their ultimate reasoning is that it's not going to be good for anybody. You know, it might look like they don't like women and they're against women, but the people that I know that are against it are, you know, most of them treat women nicely, although one of them doesn't. And so therefore you could make that argument that they just, yeah, I mean, that's always the argument, you know, the ace in the hole. He doesn't like women, he's misogynist and like that. That really doesn't make much, it's not good fodder for a philosophical discussion to attack somebody. You know, if someone's inclined that no, women become gurus, that obviously we think, well, maybe they just don't like women. But it's better to keep it philosophical. And, you know, it might seem like bodily conception, but there are other ideas. You know, long ago, my wife and I were with her mother in Manhattan, and her mother wants to take us out. And there was a IMAX movie on the Hasidics. So we thought, okay, we'll go watch that. And there was, you know, the pros and cons. And they have strong separation of male and female. And so one ex-convert or one Jewish lady who was never Hasidic said, you know, what's this all about? Their men are so weak they can't even, like, talk to women. So, of course, we know they're doing it to protect the sanctity. But it is, that argument does have some validity. You know, what's wrong with these guys? They can't even talk to a woman. They can't be around a woman. You know, like Prabhupada never told us, don't distribute to women books, don't preach to women. So that's there. So like, yeah, what's wrong with these men? They can't tolerate a woman being a guru. It's too much power. But, you know, at the same time, there is male-female distinction and discrimination that's healthy. And so it's, you know, it's difficult. It's not just women, not much women who might not join, men also abhor sexism. Very good point. Especially, I think the problem that Jayanitai is bringing up is a problem that my generation is not as aware of as your generation, Jayanitai, and the younger generation, because you're not that young anymore. But I grew up in a somewhat sexist culture, and sexism was kind of normal, so we didn't notice it so much. And so I never really heard men complaining much about the position of women in ISKCON. Actually, I never heard them ever complain about it. Or maybe I did and I didn't recognize it. At least early days, of course, you might say, well, they didn't complain because it wasn't so bad, which is true. It wasn't so bad. But we grew up in a little bit of a sexist culture. You know, women were, in the 60s, just Google a search where women were at in the 60s. Not up there with the men. Still not up there with the men, but that's a very good point. And I have to remember that. We're not just turning off the men, we're turning off the women. Karunamai says, qualified women become a guru does not in any way take away from a man's qualification from a guru. You know, Karunamai, we have a lot of men that feel uncomfortable around women that are smart, especially the ones that are smarter than them, or the ones that may be more detached and more Krishna conscious than them. And so, does this play into this equation? It's the same question of, is it because of bodily consciousness? Can we say for sure it plays into this equation? Can we say for sure it doesn't? It has to play in on some level, maybe only subtly. But in whether it plays in on the level of the decision makers, that we can't say. Does it play in the minds of some men? Yes. Why should the qualifications be different? It doesn't make sense. It shouldn't take away from ego. Yeah, all of this. And what's happening to ISKCON, it's 50 odd years old, however old it is, 52 or something, 54. It's 54 years old. Society has changed drastically. And so you have, like, I'll give you an example. I was in Ukraine, and so traditionally Ukraine was communist, and the communist system is much more authoritarian. So, if you're not a leader, you just do what the leader says. And the leader expects you to do that. That's just the system. In America, the leader may ask you to do something. You might say, I don't think that's a good idea. We should do it this way. Or why do I have to do that? Why doesn't he do it? He's, And so I saw when I was in Ukraine, there was a little bit of a problem, because in one temple, the leader was like my age. And so he grew up in this very autocratic system. And now it's democratic, and the young people are more democratic. And the young people don't relate to the older leader. They're like, well, wait a minute, why are we doing it that way? That's not a good way to do it. So that's kind of what we're going on here. We're coming out of a somewhat of a misogynist culture that we all grew up in to some degree or another, and that ISKCON was affected by it, and ISKCON was maybe more affected by it because of the separation of male-female and the monks living in temples and all the stuff we all know about. So that's complicated the issue. So when I look at this issue, I don't just see it as a philosophical issue, I see it as a growth issue. How is this going to adapt into gender roles? And, these things are always going to be there because society keeps changing, and then you have to keep adjusting. So, the kids that are growing up now that are 5 or 6, their educational system, the society they're growing up, is different from the kids who are 20. So when they're 20, they're going to be different from the 20-year-olds now. And how are we going to adjust to them and adapt to them? And how are we going to explain our philosophy to them? So these are, we don't want to change our philosophy, but these are things that we have to consider. And this is, to me, is just an issue. Sarah says, is any woman going to go through the formalities? I think 1 or 2 will, once this resolution goes. We'll have to see. It would be interesting if none go through, and then, there was so much concern, and finally, when it comes down to it, no woman wants to do it. Or even if only one wants to do it. By your test, Janitai says, let's try and see if a woman should be gurus. Men should not be gurus. Men gurus in ISKCON have had a lousy track record. Okay, so if Janitai were GBC, he would put a moratorium on making any men gurus, and he would only allow women to be gurus. And let's test the record and compare them, and maybe we would then decide that no men should ever become gurus and only women. No, at least we would decide that women gurus, we would see if women gurus can do the job as well or better. Maybe we can't say as well or better, but we could say different, and maybe different. They'll definitely do it differently because they're mothers. And I think they'll be more, you'll feel more of that motherly affection than you might feel from your male guru. Don't the male gurus prove themselves to have natural frailties? So, yeah. So the argument about the natural frailties was that women have more. and they have frailties which make it more difficult to take on the job description of a guru, which requires certain levels of detachment and a more maybe emotional maturity or emotional intelligence than God has naturally endowed them with. But the problem with these arguments is it's not tested, or someone might say it's tested, but ultimately not tested on a senior female who wants to take disciples. And it kind of minimizes the fact that they're advanced. And the third thing, can't they transcend this? And the third thing is, I've never seen that in Shastra. I think it's Shastra may describe the nature of a woman, but when you're applying it to this, they've never connected the dots. So, Pranamai says, Mataji Urmila Prabhu and Narayani, they applied, whether they want to continue, because, imagine, guys, if you're a guru, you want to be a guru, and now everyone in India doesn't want you to be a guru, but the other side of GBC said it's okay, and everybody's looking at you. You may not want to do it. Krishna Karshing says, I don't think 20-year-old girls would become guru. Well, they can't, because they put I don't even 20-year-old men would even be allowed. Elderly retired women whose kids are grown up will be gurus. I don't think many women would want to take. They won't. That's why it's like. In my mind, it was never an issue because there's so few want to do it, and these men are thinking, but we'll get overrun by woman gurus. I would be greatly surprised if that happened. I don't see that many on the horizon, and when I talk to my wife about it, she always says it's not the nature of a woman to want to be in that position. It's not even the nature of a lot of men. I have a lot of godbrothers, and I say, why don't you be a guru? People would like you. There's so many places to go. We need so many more gurus. And it's not my nature. It's not an easy job. You think it's easy to be honored everywhere you go? Be treated like representative of God everywhere you go? And you have to have a very, very high-level ideal profile. And if you don't, people, the Ritviks, even if you do, the Ritviks are going to smash you. And what to speak if you, are seen in a pair of Bermuda shorts on a Facebook picture and you're a guru. That could be the end of your career. So, or what to speak if you're a woman and your head wasn't covered while you were giving class, your sari fell off, or you're, exercising or something, and the picture goes on Facebook. How many people want to do that? Not even men. So, anyway, Urmila's traveling everywhere, and Narayani's in Vrindavan. She travels in the summer. Maybe the best solution would be have women-only female disciples. Well, that was a discussion. That's kind of a tradition in some areas that they only have female disciples. But men will want them also. So what do you do? I think, Lakshmi Priya says, I think many of them won't apply to avoid so much trouble even when they are qualified, When I read the news, I immediately thought Mother Urmila, but she posted that she has no interest in applying, and I understand why. They don't want war. She applied before and there were problems. So maybe if the atmosphere or culture changes in ISKCON, maybe she'll change her mind. I found this statement very important. I think which statement it is? I think I'm going to put ISKCON on another level. I read sometime on Facebook a funny commentary a few months ago. Women could not make more mistakes than men. Than men have already made in our movement. What do you think? They're not going to make the same mistakes. They're not, like I said, the sexual problem is not a problem for women like it is for men. Is it not that someone, including women, cannot express desire to become a guru? The devotees have to be inspired by the person. They're asking if allowing this person to be a guru. If you're inspired by someone, you can ask them to be your guru, and then it will go to GBC. So here's what's going to happen. Once the GBC gives the green light, then devotees will go to Urmila Mataji and say, will you initiate me? And she's going to say no. And next year they'll say, will you initiate me? And next year they'll say, will you initiate? And then 5 will say, and 10 will say, and at some point she might say, okay. And maybe someone we're not thinking of, who is just a great humble Vaishnava, will be approached. And then she'll have to look in her heart and see what to do, if she wants to do it. And then Lakshmi sings Shamarani, Chaturani travels and preaches. Yeah, so many women travel and preach. Maitreya here. Maitreya, you know what Cindy Crawford said? Maitreya went to school with Cindy Crawford. Cindy Crawford said, she saw a picture of her and she looked at it and she said, I wish I looked like Cindy Crawford. About the Photoshop picture. The hypocrisy of not immediately accepting qualified women to become gurus is just jaw-dropping but not shocking. I have come to expect this sort of thing in this movement. So we'll send women out all day on Sankirtan in unsafe neighborhoods as long as they're bringing back money. That's fine. But if they have a chance to inspire others in Krishna consciousness, suddenly very concerned about their safety, I call bullshit. That is such a good point. But in defense of the authorities, you know, they're getting all this flack from the other side, and most of GBC realize, no, we have to let women be guru. There's no reason not to. So, you know, it's the movement's so young, and you know, they're so cautious not to make mistakes. So that's why the GBC just hasn't put their foot down against the opposition. And these things may have been discussed amongst the GBC. We don't know that. They may have made your same points, but it's a very good point. Ego war based on bodily platform. The men and women. Yeah, that's always there. We all know that there are strong and qualified women in the world and in ISKCON, and I think we ISKCON have to change the times. Yeah. Generally, devotees in the West are like that. It's just the Indian, they're coming. Kind of different culture. Okay, mother is guru. There's amazing potential, yeah. Annalise, I have a question in this case. Is it valid to apply the fact that we are not the body? No, because you have a body and therefore you have to use the woman's restroom. And you have to stand on a certain side of the temple, this and that. So that's where the body comes in. So it's just like, where do you draw the line on the body? You know, bathrooms, that's pretty obvious. Is it, you know, can a man give the ghee lamp to a woman? Is that allowed? Krishna Karshani says, I have a strong feeling no woman would become a guru in ISKCON. Maybe. That would be so interesting if after 17 years of discussion and finally they say, okay, women become gurus, and after all that, none of them want to do it. It's like, well, why are we spending so much time and energy on an issue that's so, you know, almost irrelevant, that there'll hardly ever be any woman to do it? And Prabhupada said it's rare, and so we would see how rare it is. It's definitely rare. And the only woman who would want to do it within our movement would be very Krishna conscious, very advanced. Anyway, so, and maybe you're right. Maybe none of them will do it. That would be quite interesting. So, it's freezing cold out here, and I haven't had breakfast. And I'm going to have to say goodbye. I have some things to do today. And we'll see you tomorrow, same time. Possibly 5 minutes later, I'm doing some question and answers on forgiveness for a group of people who are taking our forgiveness course in Mexico. So that will go on half hour before this class. Katie is going to be the first female guru, but we have to wait 30 years for it. And I don't know if I'll be around, Katie, to see it. But I am in a place called Atascadero, which is about 15 miles north of San Luis Obispo. And San Luis Obispo is about, I don't know, it takes 4 hours to drive from Los Angeles. And it is about 3 hours from Monterey, California. It's about a half hour east of Morro Bay. And yeah, basically, Kripinidhi, if you just jump in the air and go south, you'll land on this terrace right here. Yeah. So, nice discussion. We'll discuss more tomorrow about women's position. And I like my conclusion. One conclusion I like to make from this discussion is just how we can maturely, observe and deal with these things, because this is just one issue of many social issues in which ISKCON is struggling with, in which we have devotees on both sides. And obviously, we're going to have to maturely deal with this without offending anyone who doesn't agree with us, and trying to understand why they don't agree. At the same time, we have our own opinion. We're trying to understand Shastra. We want to understand what Prabhupada wanted. We want to make the world Krishna conscious. We have to mix this up all in a kitchery, and we have to be able to inspire everyone, at the same time satisfy everyone's interests, and it's not an easy job. But the main thing to remember, untrue. What did Mangalamai Malini Devi say? I didn't see her comment. Guru Prabhupada, from Brahma, we don't find any women. Oh, I didn't even see that. No, no, not in the. She's saying in the major Guru Parampara, and what Maitreya is saying. No, it's in the Guru Parampara. There are many gurus that are not listed in that Guru Parampara. Who's listed in the Guru Parampara are the main ones, not all of them. But there are many branches off those main branches, and yeah, there was like there were women gurus. They did give initiation, but there weren't many. Janavi Mata was like a huge guru. She was the main acharya, which is so interesting. She was the main acharya after Nityananda left. So let's deal with this maturely, and don't in this discussion just don't offend anybody. That's important. And we'll see you tomorrow. It's 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's 8:30 for me here in California. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.